Yesterday was cutdown day for the entire NFL, so that means the Pittsburgh Steelers have officially announced their 53-man roster to start this season. Also, the Steelers, they're starting to sign some players to their practice squad as well, and in this video, I'll be covering those signings and also the final cuts that were made to get their roster down to 53. But first, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, and analysis. Also like the video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, first off, let me just start off with the signings the Pittsburgh Steelers made to their practice squad. When the practice squad becomes official and they have every single player, I'll make a separate video on that. But so far, let me just give you the updates on the players the Steelers have signed this far. So you're allowed 16 spots, and they signed 2 players. They signed running back Boston Scott, and they signed running back Jonathan Ward. And those are the 2 players the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed this far. When you look at running back Boston Scott, he's a running back who is a veteran in this league. He has not been on many teams because in the NFL, he's really only been on the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of actually playing in NFL games with the Eagles. He was with the Eagles from 2018 to 2023. He's a smaller type of running back, only standing at 5'6", 204 pounds, but he is a shifty back, and he was utilized very well for many seasons with the Eagles. As he gets later into his career, at 29 years old, he now finds himself on the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad. Also, the Steelers have signed running back Jonathan Ward. Jonathan Ward is an unexperienced back in terms of actually seeing the field in the NFL. He has been in the NFL for a while though, 2020 to 2023. So, the Steelers have signed Jonathan Ward to their roster. He's 6 foot tall, 202 pounds. Anyway, now let's go over the cuts that were made to get the Pittsburgh Steelers down to 53 players on their roster because they had to make a lot of cuts to do so. Yesterday I covered the first 15 players that were cut, but more was obviously done. So looking at the cuts that were made in total, let's look at Dejon Edwards, Jack Colito, Jacob Copeland, TJ Luther, Quez Watkins, Devery Hamilton, Anderson Hardy, Tyler Beach, Marquise Spencer, Kyron Johnson, Kaiave Tenzo, Keandre Thomas, Kyler McMichael, Thomas Graham Jr., and Matthew Wright. Those were the first 15. But these are the players I did not cover now. Looking at late cut linebacker Luque Washington, Jacob Windeman, Marcus Haynes, Zion Gilbert, Wellington Prevelin, Jacob Slade, offensive lineman Tykeem Doss, who they actually claimed off the waivers when he got released earlier this offseason, Joey Fisher, John Rice Plumlee, the quarterback, the do-it-all type of player. They cut him. They cut running back Aaron Champlin, tight end Matt Sokol, tight end Ronnie Williams, who's been on the team for a while, more of a run blocking type of tight end. They cut Jeray Jenkins, Deuce Watts, Des Fitzpatrick, Michael P. Ryan, and running back Jonathan Ward. So they signed obviously Jonathan Ward back to the practice squad like I named. Also, some players that were placed on IR and to return at a later date is Dylan Cook and Jeremiah Moon. So, looking at those cuttings from the Pittsburgh Steelers, the only one that maybe was in question in my eyes, like I said yesterday, was Kyron Johnson, but it looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers will be utilizing DeMarvin Leal as an outside linebacker edge rusher alongside a defensive line. So, that was a surprise. Also, maybe another one was Des Fitzpatrick. The Pittsburgh Steelers obviously decided to stick with only 5 wide receivers and keep Scotty Miller instead, but it seems like Des Fitzpatrick was a good player in his time here for the last 2 seasons in preseason and just doing his job really well. Also, I believe personally that John Rice Plumlee outplayed Kyle Allen throughout training camp and throughout the preseason, but he was cut and Kyle Allen was kept. Anyway, let's move over to the actual 53-man roster that the Pittsburgh Steelers have now, because they have a final 53 heading into the NFL season. And this is not the official one. Stuff could obviously change in terms of signings. The Pittsburgh Steelers could obviously claim some players off of waivers that were cut from different teams. They didn't thus far, but they could go and sign some players to their 53-man roster that was cut from another team For example, just say they would like Noah Brown and he was cut from the Texans. If he wants to sign with the Steelers, he gets to be signed. So this is an initial 53-man roster, not necessarily the one that the Steelers will head into going into the first game. But anyway, let's go through it. Because on offense, the Steelers kept 3 quarterbacks. They kept Kyle Allen, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. This is alphabetical order, by the way. Looking at running backs, they kept Najee Harris, Cordell Patterson, Jalen Warren. Wide receivers, they kept Calvin Austin III, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, George Pickens, and Roman Wilson. So they kept 5. Steelers kept 3 running backs and 3 quarterbacks. The Steelers actually went out and kept 4 tight ends this season. Usually they really don't, but they kept 4. Pat Freiermuth, Nicole Pruitt, Darnell Washington, and Connor Hayward, who's a tight end and a fullback. On the offensive line, the Pittsburgh Steelers kept Spencer Anderson, James Daniels, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Ryan McCullum, Mason McCormick, Dan Moore Jr., and Isaac Seumalo. They kept 9. And the one here that maybe many people didn't think were going to make it was Ryan McCullum. But because of the injury to Nate Herbig, they needed to keep a backup center on the roster. So he was the only backup center, and he sticks on this team. So one player getting injured helps Ryan McCullum make a 53-man roster. Now, moving over to the defense side of the ball, looking at the defense line, the Pittsburgh Steelers kept Montravius Adams, Keanu Benton, Cameron Hayward, DeMarvin Leal, Logan Lee, Isaiah Loudermilk, Dean Lowry, Larry Ogunjobi. Looking at these players the Steelers kept, the surprise here is Logan Lee. But at the same time, it's not a surprise because the Steelers really don't usually cut their draft picks that were drafted in the same year. And Logan Lee, even though he didn't play too well in training camp or preseason, he sticks around because he was a draft pick. Also, another one is Dean Lowry, who was injured for most of camp, barely played in the preseason, but I guess he did just enough to make this team. He is a veteran, so he probably gets the benefit of the doubt compared to some other players. Looking at linebackers, the Pittsburgh Steelers kept 3 outside linebackers only, and I'll go over that again. But they kept Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt as outside linebackers. I believe it's because they're going to be utilizing DeMarvin Leal as the 4th, but he's listed as a defense lineman right now because he could play edge rusher. He's done so in college a little bit, and I believe that's where he'll be utilized. That's where he was utilized in the preseason, and that's what he could do. So they kept 3 outside linebackers. But in terms of inside linebackers, they keep Tyler McKinnovich, Patrick Queen, Elan Roberts, Mark Robinson, and Peyton Wilson. Cole Holcomb is obviously on the injured list as well, so he's not here. They keep Tyler McKinnovich probably mainly for special teams. Mark Robinson is still a player I really like and I think could break out if he's given the opportunity, but obviously he's stuck behind players that are higher in the depth chart. Looking at the defensive backs, the Pittsburgh Steelers kept Beanie Bishop Jr., Deshaun Elliott, Jalen Elliott, Mick Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson, DeMonte KZ, Miles Killebrew, Joey Porter Jr., Darius Rush, and Corey Trice Jr. So, looking at these players, Beanie Bishop Jr., he won the starting slot cornerback position. Obviously, Cameron Sutton, he's on the suspended list, so when he comes back, he can be it. But if Beanie Bishop plays well enough, he could be the starter long term for the Steelers at that position, and he earned it throughout the preseason and camp. Looking at the surprise keeping of Jalen Elliott, Deshaun Elliott obviously came over in free agency, but Jalen Elliott was a guy who was cut many times by the Steelers. Many times. Cut, signed, and he was officially signed and kept on the 53-man roster. So this just proves for him that if you don't keep your head down and you keep a good attitude, you could go in and earn a spot. And that's what he did. He never let being cut bring him down, and he was able to make this team after all the cuts. On special teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers' most obvious cut keeps are kicker Chris Boswell, punter Cameron Johnston, and long snapper Christian Kuntz. So this is the Pittsburgh Steelers' 53-man roster initially going into the 2024-2025 season. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the 2 practice squad signings. The Pittsburgh Steelers bringing back Jonathan Ward, even though he was cut to their practice squad, but also signing Boston Scott to their practice squad as well. Also, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the final cuttings. who was cut that maybe surprised you, that you thought was going to make this team or you wanted to make this team, that was eventually cut. Also, on the actual 53-man roster, who was kept by the Steelers that was a shocker to you, who you didn't have making it that eventually made it. Also, let me hear your thoughts down in the comments below on week 1 and your predictions for that game. Also, make sure you subscribe to this channel, turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports, breaking news, everything like that. I've covered all this offseason. I'll continue to cover it all as we go throughout the regular season as well. And just know when next offseason comes, I'll cover it all again. So, this is the best spot for Pittsburgh Steelers news. Like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on notifications. And I'll see you guys all later. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.